it's so nice to see that the audience is still full in our last conversation, and this is going to be actually a conversation because I just spoke with Sartaj and Aaron that we're going to do it a little bit different, right? This panel. They will also talk among themselves, between themselves. I think the most important thing now to introduce this conversation is to tell you how generous these guys are. Sartaj came from India, Aaron came from the United States, from Silicon Valley, and like Edgar just said, they came as volunteers. Sartaj came with the support of our social good, plus social good, because it makes us a big part of this big network. And what I've learned in this last years is that working with innovation, we create an environment, innovation environment to share generosity, exchange things. So thank you so much, Aaron. Thank you so much, Sartaj, and all the international speakers that came as volunteers. So I think this is the best way to work with social networks. So he's going to talk about IDEO, and he has been a journalist for so long. IDEO is an icon. And I'd like to ask you, how many of you know a little bit of IDEO? Cool. And who knows a little bit of design thinking? Who knows the design thinking methodology? Great. Who has already applied the methodology, design thinking? Oh, great. So I think, Aaron, it's going to be really cool to talk to you. It's a methodology that we use at Social Good since the beginning to even create the program. And Luis already, Edgar talked about Luis already. Luis proposed a big challenge. In 2011, he asked us to, remember, to use design thinking already to help Fundação Telefônica to remodel their volunteers program. It was such an experience, it was such a challenge, right? I confess now that I was really afraid because we worked with 80 people from different companies of the group, and through design thinking, Aaron, we were able to do that. And it was such a challenge, right, Luis? This co-creation together with these new methodologies. We use a lot at Social Good Lab. All the ideas that you guys, you see the 6 finalists that you met, these fantastic kids, they went through the experience, working with design centered in the human being. It's so nice to know that you're here. And the generosity that you had in sharing that with me. And you don't come to Brazil very often, so what a privilege, right, that you guys accepted our invitation. We know how hard it is. And Sartaj has a very small dream, little dream. I think that dream big and dream small is the same work, so let's just dream big, right? Sartaj is here to help and to teach us how to dream big. He wants to impact 1 billion people. Maybe in India, it's not that big, but to us, this is still too big. So, speaking of scale, right? New methodology and that. So let's really enjoy everything we can from Sartaj. We're going to, hear them, their presentations, and we're going to be talking mainly about human beings. Sartaj was talking to me about psychology, and it's all around human being. I'm a psychologist myself. That's my passion. It makes me go on. So everything we talk here is from a human being to another human being. It's nice to see the behavior. Technology is nothing. We are everything, right? Technology is a tool that helps us to make more. Luis is here to help, to interact with the audience. And so let's do that. Let's make a conversation between Aaron and Sartaj. Aaron, you can start. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. Oh boy, that's loud. Thanks so much, first off, to Social Good Brazil and to everyone who has made it possible for it. I'm so excited to be here in Brazil. It's my first time, so Florianopolis is my first taste of Brazil, and it's an absolutely lovely place, as you all know. So, all right, there it is. Hello, Social Good Brazil. My name is Britt, and I'm senior editor at IDEO.org. So let's start first with, what is IDEO.org and what is IDEO? I love that so many people have heard of our company. For those who haven't, IDEO is a global design organization, and we practice design in the most broad possible way. We design products, we design services, we design experiences, we design communications. I mean, give us anything and we'll design it. And one of the ways that we're able to do this is using a particular approach to problem solving that we call design thinking or human-centered design. And to briefly frame up what that is, it's about deeply understanding and empathizing with the group of people for whom you're designing. And that could be people who need to use a new cell phone. It could be people who want to have a different experience in a hospital. It could be people who face the challenges of poverty. And so our teams go out, we gain deep empathy with the people that we're designing for, we synthesize everything we heard from them, we quickly build a prototype, put it back in their hands, and then we ask them what they think. And the idea here is that if we can bring the people that we're trying to reach into the process, we can treat them as individuals, as humans, not just as some group of faceless consumers, we're gonna get to a solution that it suits their needs so much better because we've brought them along for the ride. So here's an example of a handful of things that IDEO has designed. We did the first laptop, we've done services, products, things for banks. It's an IDEO.org project down there on the bottom left. Clean Team, which was a water and sanitation service in Ghana. And so IDEO, about 10 years ago, started to think about how it could do more social good. How could it use design to benefit the most possible people? And they started taking on some social innovation projects. But we had a problem, which is that IDEO was and is a successful design company. And as you all know, successful design companies love to charge everybody $1 bazillion as often as they can, right? So when we thought about who we could benefit, people living in poverty, those guys don't have $1 bazillion. So we tried to figure out a way in which to make the business model work. And the way it worked was to spin off IDEO.org as a nonprofit. So we were founded in 2011, and we are sort of the nonprofit arm of IDEO. We're a separate entity, but born out of IDEO's culture and design practice and commitment to using design to solve problems. And so we do this in a couple of different ways. One of the ways is the solutions we actually create, and those are our design teams who are going out into the world, working with partners and foundations to try to create solutions. And then there's also a belief that we hold very strongly, and this is mostly my job, is to think about ways in which we can share our approach to problem solving, because we believe that out there in the aid and social good space, too often the people that bodies are trying to serve aren't actually talking to the people themselves. How can we try to make aid more human-centered, more innovative, more creative, and more transparent? And so here are a handful of projects we've done. We've done health projects. A couple of exciting ones are a clinic in Lusaka, Zambia, where girls can go to get real information and services around their reproductive health. And there was tons and tons of misinformation, and girls weren't getting what they needed, and it's a culture that can be hostile to reproductive health and family planning. So we had to devise a new way to reach girls. And one of the ways we did that was, it sounds crazy, but what if you got your information not in a sterile clinic? What if you got it in a place where you could be with your friends, having fun, in an informal setting where you could still get information? And in a place where one of these key insights we had is, what if you could get this information without having to make eye contact with the person giving it to you? So where might girls go where they don't have to make eye contact, can be with their friends, can be in an informal setting? A nail salon. We designed a pop-up nail salon where girls could get information about reproductive health. And it's piloted for 3 months, and it's going incredibly well. Another project was Clean Team. I think we saw the photo up there. And now we've got toilets in the homes of 3,500 people who have never had access before. So those are some of the solutions we create. And then there's the way in which we try to transform organizations, and problem solvers. And that's through our teaching tools. That's something on which I work. And I spent 10 years as a journalist. What I love to do is tell stories. And in this case, it's telling the story of a design methodology, of a process that can help get you further, faster, in a more innovative way. So some of the tools we've designed, I'll show you now. Oh, here's a little stat, 40,000. That's the number of people who have registered for our course for human-centered design, which I'll speak about. So one of the first and most successful tools we made was the HCD toolkit. Has anyone out there seen the HCD toolkit or downloaded it? A couple of people, awesome. So this was designed in 2009, and it's been downloaded, I think, 141,000 times. And this is a guide to our approach. We think this is a great way for you to understand human-centered design and apply it particularly with regards to social sector problems. I'll give you a little inside knowledge. We are going to redesign and rewrite the HCD toolkit after 5 years now. It's time for an update. So that's a project that I'm working on right now. I've seen some of the initial layouts, and it's going to be very, very, very good. So you can buy it when it becomes available in hard copy, or it'll be available as a free download. Design Kit is a website that we launched in September. And this is really sort of now like the big platform by which we talk about human-centered design. And we had a community called HCD Connect. I don't know if anyone out there is an HCD Connect member, but that was a website that had 57,000 users. We were so excited about that community, but again, it was a first stab at sharing human-centered design online, and we thought we could do, we learned a lot, and we were ready to iterate on what we'd done. So the three key pieces of Design Kit are a handful of videos that share the mindsets. This is sort of like the philosophy of human-centered design. It's not about, do this or say that when you meet someone. It's about what animates human-centered designers. So we get at ideas like learning from failure, creative confidence, empathy, comfort with ambiguity. And these are the sort of underpinnings of human-centered design. They're the philosophy that help drive you forward and help you understand where you might be going, which is important because human-centered design starts from the perspective of not knowing what the answer is, which can be super uncomfortable for people. But we believe that, if you knew the answer when you started, you'd have no reason to go talk to people. And if you're not talking to people, we wonder how you're going to arrive at a good solution. We've got 54 different design methods on Design Kit, and this is almost like a recipe card to how to practice design the way that we do. And then another big and important storytelling piece are case studies. And this is a chance where we get to show you from beginning to end how a human-centered design project works, what sort of impact it might have, and what the insights are that we arrived at that helped us get there. We've got a course which has been registered for 40,000 times now. We've had 40,000 people from 148 countries take our 7-week online course. You form a team, you get together, and then for 7 weeks, you download PDFs and interact with people from IDEO.org and also from Acumen. Plus Acumen is a platform on which we run the course. And this has been a really exciting opportunity to share human-centered design at a truly massive scale. Here are a handful of people who enjoyed the course. And that's it. That's a glimpse of the teaching tools that we've designed at IDEO.org. And I'm so excited to tell you more about human-centered design and mostly to hear from Sartaj.
Okay, so a bit of context. I'll try to share where I come from, what my context is, and pretty much how that inspires the way I live and work. So that's me, pretty much. And this, for all practical purposes, is a brief history of my life. I do a bunch of things. I consult, I write, I invest. But this is the important part. So at the age of 13, I had malaria. I almost died. I was in coma for 3 days. And several years after that, at the age of 25, I had a heart attack, which was pretty bad because I worked a lot. And somewhere in the middle, I sort of had a epiphany, a tipping point where I discovered that, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And I should better figure out, because I'm like an engineer, so I'm a math person, so I'm thinking eventually, at some age, X, which I'm thinking right now, close to 40, I might just die. So if it's going to happen at some point, how do I sort of figure out what I was built for before that happens? And that's sort of been driving my life. So this question of purpose, why I exist, what I'm supposed to do, was pretty scary. And the only way I sort of dealt with that situation was, how do I fight fear with fear? So what I did was, I wanted to set a goal which was big enough so that I could chase it for the rest of my life and not achieve it, and it would still be a great run. I also wanted to do something big enough that it would scare me every day and push me, and something that was bigger than just cashing in the next paycheck or getting a degree or something else. And for me, that was pretty much impacting 1 billion people. Partly because I come from India, we have 1.3 billion people, so I'm thinking 80% of the market, that's good enough, right? That's good. So we have enough people to do that. And the other way I look at it, it's like 1 out of 7 people. So you're telling me in a room of 700 people, I can't talk and make 100 people feel happier, and that's not good impact? It is. So it's maybe soft impact. Maybe I'm not going to lift 100 people out of poverty, but it's still better than 0. So that's how I was sort of happy with myself, and that's how things began for me. The reason why this is important is because I think I was fortunate enough to develop an ideology of abundance, something which said that drove the scarcity mindset out of me. So I no longer thought, oh, the opportunities are too small, there's too much competition. For me, I thought, I have 1 billion people to talk to. I have 1 billion people to positively impact in some way or the other. So that just blew the door open in that sense. I didn't have to worry about, okay, what if I don't do this or this or this? The ecosystem became much bigger for me personally. And that was my tipping point. And so now I get sort of more serious. So I had this vague concept of life for good, in this context, life plus good. And then I thought, okay, I want to help businesses and institutions and organizations do good, because that allows me to scale the personal impact I can do. And eventually it led me to exponential technologies for good. How can I help businesses and institutions think about exponential technology or use exponential technology for a good purpose? And I'm just going to talk about 3 things that I've found, and then sort of jump in with Aaron to talk about cool stuff. The first one is this, which is singularity. The singularity itself concept says that at some point, machine intelligence on the planet will exceed human intelligence. And that's simple as that. And Kevin Kelly from Wired says that when that incident happens, when we reach the singularity, 1 million years of technological evolution will be matched by 5 minutes of technological evolution post-singularity. That's how powerful that is. And for anyone who thinks that that's bullshit, that's not going to happen, this proves it, because we went from 400 million years ago, life starting, to evolution speeding up to a point where we have, in 100 years, the personal computer, right? So it went faster and faster and faster. And then you have the next slide, which just focuses on the last century for computers, which just says we went from big computer rooms to now pretty much servers and server farms, which are faster and faster. So this graph pretty much says that somewhere close to 2045, we'll have a machine whose intelligence, whose brain power will exceed every human brain power ever. Our whole human race will be superseded by one machine, pretty much, at some point. And that, for a lot of people, is scary, but for me, I find it interesting, because I'm thinking in that world, we don't have to do a lot of things we do right now. So that's one thing, to deal with this change in a way that we are looking forward to it, and because it's very real. And the funny part is, it's going to happen within the next 50 years, so within our lifetime. That's one thing. The second one is, whenever people talk about exponential technologies right now, we're essentially talking of these 9 things. So I've sort of categorized them according to computing, manufacturing, biology, and then put some triggers on them: speed, cost, accuracy, and size. So artificial intelligence, internet, mobile, 3D printing, nanotubes, synthetic life, where we actually create life now, either through stem cell technology. And we also see some really real applications of them, so like self-driving cars or social networks, or even the wearables that everyone wears now, like a jawbone or something. These are the exponential technologies that we talk about right now. And that leads to the last point, which is that we have to think about technologies from a contextual point of view. What I mean by that is, right now we are in the model of economy. Right now we are in what I would say a collaborative economy, a sharing economy. So stuff like Airbnb, Uber, all of that. But the first model of economy always is an agricultural economy, an agrarian economy, in which case, if you look at that, the first exponential technology back then was fire. So fire was the game changer when everyone was farming, because that was something people even thought about. The same thing applies for industrial. So in the case of industrial economy, it was the engine. You're telling me that I put petrol into something and it can go on and on and on and on. I don't have to worry about it. So at that point in time, the engine was the sort of exponential technology of that time. In the case of knowledge economies, which is where we were like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, with IT and everything, it was computers. Now with the creative economy, which is this freelancer economy, the gig economy, it's platforms. So platforms like Freelancer. So you're telling me we can have every freelancer on the world on one platform? It's possible, right? It's been achieved. So before the creative economy, people thought that was impossible. But platforms came in the creative economy and made that happen. And the last part was a collaborative economy, sharing economy, where we are. And the 9 technologies that we talk about are just exponential for this economy. And after this, we'll move on to something else, and those things will change. But it's just that within our context of maybe the next 20 or 50 years, we're going to think about synthetic life, we're going to think about 3D printing. But eventually, like, I don't know, 4 generations from now, everyone in this room will be comfortable with ordering something online and having their Nike shoe printed in their houses. And that's the life we're going to live. And our grandchildren are going to be, oh, this is how I always lived my life compared to now, right? So that's about it. Boring stuff, but let's talk about it.
Would like to ask a question to
I got a
Sartaj?
question for you. Absolutely, man. So, you know, based on this model that you've just laid out for us, right, there's going to be a moment whereby machines are more intelligent than we are, and then let's suppose machines can take on tasks that we're tired of doing or don't like doing, or they just do it better. So it seems like one of these abundances that you're talking about, maybe in our lifetimes, but certainly in our grandchildren's lifetimes, let's say, is time, right? I mean, so what are you, first I'll ask by asking, like, what are you going to do when you've got tons of time because machines are doing all your shit for you? And then, secondly, like, what should our grandchildren do?
So first of all, Aaron, they should tell stories, something you're really good at. But so I would just write. I would pursue the creative pursuits that machines can never be good at, right? And that's what collaborative of creative economies really mean. What if we didn't have to do anything to make money? What if money became
paradise?
So yeah, maybe that's going to be possible, right? I don't have all the answers, but that's what we're gearing towards. When we're saying all the heavy lifting is done by machines, what's left for us? And that's an existential question that we have to answer on a daily basis. It's like when someone goes to a newspaper, right? And you have new machines, and someone's job is cut in, the time it needs to print a newspaper now is cut in half. What does this person do with all his time? You figure it out eventually. It's scary at that point in time when it happens to you, but give it 5 years and you move on to something else which is more worth your time. And I think we'll move on to a plateau where human intelligence will be more respected and more creative. So I think it'll be the greatest, most creative time in humanity ever. Yeah.
So our grandchildren will just be writing music and composing poetry and...
You'll have like 1,000 Rihannas.
1,000 Rihannas?
That's not good. That may not be good, but it may happen.
Billion 1,000. Sartaj, can you ask a question?
So for me, like, a bit more about your background, right? Because when I think of IDEO, I think of designers, but you obviously have a journalistic sort of experience. Like, how does that integrate into the job you do? How does behind the scenes at IDEO work, right? Because for me, that's also interesting because we build IDEO up like a hero. It can do anything, but how does it work on the back end?
Well, we've got these fabulous machines that do all the work for us, and then we travel around the world trying to spread the gospel of IDEO. No. So about my background, yeah, I spent 10 years as a journalist before joining IDEO.org. I joined about a year ago, and I think one of the reasons that they wanted me, or one of the reasons I hope they want me, is because IDEO really believes in multidisciplinary teams. And I think that's part of how they've been able to integrate a little bit of anthropology into the design process. So if you look at a standard IDEO or IDEO.org design team, you know, if it's a project working on an agricultural tool, it's not just industrial designers and mechanical engineers. You want to get a business designer in there. You want to get a graphic designer in there. You want to comprise your team of as many people who can practice human-centered design, but those who are going to bring a variety of perspectives to what you're doing. Because the idea is that, you know, 3 industrial designers put on a project are all going to think like industrial designers. It's not their fault, it's what they do, right? But if you can mix it up, you might arrive at something a little more surprising and a little more innovative. And we're really looking for insight all over the place, from the people that we talk to figure out what to make, but also from the teams themselves. And so that's why I was brought on. And then I also think from a practical perspective, IDEO.org is young, and they wanted someone who could think hard about how to tell stories, how to, not only what the story should be, what sort of assets do we need, what kind of photos should we look for, what kind of video should we take. And so I think someone with a journalist background fit that idea for them. Although you can all ask my boss how well I'm doing. It's in fact, if it turns out it's bad, let me know. Does that answer your question? Or what else can I tell you about the IDEO design process?
Yeah, no, behind the scenes, right? Like in terms of the people, what's life like? Like, for example, what makes people at IDEO tick? Because for me, it's like an ideas factory, right? It's always perfect, but life isn't perfect, and business certainly isn't. So how do you first of all balance IDEO and IDEO.org? Because one is a non-profit, the other is a for-profit. How does that balancing act sort of work, if at all? And how do two sort of share adversities, challenges, tough times also?
Yeah. So so IDEO.org is a separate non-profit entity. So though we bear IDEO's name and a lot of talent comes from IDEO, we are a separate organization. But the links are incredibly strong. You know, we've got people from IDEO, like the CEO of IDEO is on our board, for example, and partners are on our board. And people who founded IDEO.org worked at IDEO. So that's the link. We also have IDEO designers come over and work for us. So we'll have, say, a year-long fellowship or a 6-month fellowship where an interaction designer or a mechanical engineer or someone from IDEO will come and work with our project teams. So that's another way that we can sort of learn from IDEO's design expertise. And frankly, it's a really nice way to staff our projects. As we look down the line at what we're going to need, you know, we can say, all right, we're going to need a mechanical engineer, so let's grab one from IDEO. In terms of behind the scenes, first off, it's like a really, really nice place to work. They're so nice. It seems crazy that you go to the office and all these people are sort of like, they feel good, they're happy. And I think they try really hard to get those people. Isn't it like that famous line from the guy who started Pret-a-Manger, the sandwich shop in London? There are like a bazillion Pret-a-Manger sandwich shops, and somebody asked him, you know, your staff is so nice, how do you do this? And he said, you know, I find happy people and I teach them to make sandwiches. I don't find sandwich experts and then try to make them happy. And I think that was incredible, and some of that ethos has slipped into IDEO as well. So you try to find people who are really optimistic and energetic and engaged, and that's definitely one of the qualities they look for in terms of who to bring on.
Sounds good. Sounds like a great place. Who wants to work here at IDEO? Recruitment drive.
All right, I'm leaving for San Francisco on Sunday, so first one who can fit into my suitcase, I think gets the job. I know, which rules out poor Edgar.
Luis, would you like to ask you a question?
Gentlemen, I'd like to ask you about the design, human-centered design, because I'm actually making some consulting for this in Brazil, and some businessmen are not so happy with the results. So I'd like to listen to Aaron's experience. How do you approach, the first approach when you go to a social organization or to some executives they want, because sometimes the guy did not live a process himself of a human-centered design. So he does not know, he projects some results, but he forgets that if human-centered design, of course the results are improbable because human beings are very unpredictable. What's your view on that?
Well, that's a good question. And one of the things that we try to do, insofar as we want to bring the people we're designing for along for the ride, we want to bring our partners along for the ride. And that often means that there's a degree of education that needs to happen. Now, thankfully, IDEO and IDEO.org have been around for a while and they have a reputation. So when people come to us, it's rare that they want IDEO but hate our design approach. That doesn't really happen, but sometimes it does. And so in that case, what you have to do is really educate your partner or your client around why human-centered design works. And we believe that one of the best ways to do that is to throw them into the mix. So as much as it's possible, we want partner organizations embedded with our team out there doing the work, because that helps us create champions in our partner for our design approach and for our ultimate solution. So that's one way to do it. And you're right, there are some people who are really critical of our methodology. They might say, oh, it's too soft, you don't rely on hard data, what's wrong with surveys? Like, I want to hear from, 5,000 people, not just the 50 that you talk to. But we believe that there's so much wisdom and insight you can glean from talking to even 50 people that a survey just can't capture, because you're with someone in his house, seeing how he lives, asking him questions about why he does the things that he does, and that reveals something that even if we're not able to do it 1,000 times and have a statistically substantial amount of data, we think that like you do it 50 times and you hear the same thing 35 times, you think to yourself like, all right, there's got to be something to this. And then one of the awesome things about design thinking and human-centered design is it's intuitive. Our designers follow their noses. We tell them that you should explore your hunch. You should trust your gut, because of this empathy that you've built with the people that you're designing for. You're better able to kind of almost, intuit what might satisfy them. And then, of course, you show it to them, and then they tell you if they're satisfied or not.
I think we were talking about this, Fernando, earlier, is the only people or entities that are actually working now to get scale are big commercial giants, like say like a Procter & Gamble or a Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola right now is being used by the Gates Foundation to get drugs for malaria and other diseases that even governments can't reach, because Coca-Cola is there. So one, it's possible. It just needs enough will to achieve that, and normally money is enough motivation to do that. What I try to focus on now is how do I build products or services which use the psychology that someone like a Coca-Cola uses or a Procter & Gamble uses, but for social good. So to give you an example, and this is something we talked about, was a hook model. So the hook model essentially says that you start out with a trigger, you do something. So I'll give you an example of Facebook. So in the case of Facebook, you see, say, a notification, that's the trigger, which says, oh, someone tagged a photo of you. The next thing is an action. So you click on it, that's your action. The next thing what happens is a variable reward. Now, you don't know what it is. You don't know if it's a photo of you in the office. You don't know if it's a photo of you when you were a baby. You don't know what you're going to get. But it's like a prize. It's like it's going to give you something. So it's a variable reward. And the last part is that you do something in response to it, like an investment you make. So you either like it or share it or comment on it or bookmark it, or you do something with it. And when you do something with this, Facebook learns, this person did this. And this is a loop. And for a normal user, in the case of Facebook, you do this, if you get 20 notifications every day, you do this in a month, 600 times, 700 times. So what is that done? Give it 6 months, and you're used to checking on this for 4,000, 5,000 times, and now it's become a habit. So for me, I think the easiest way to break through scale is to build a habit of change. And the hook model sort of explains how you sort of psychologically make people want it. So Coca-Cola now doesn't ever give you a sample of Coke because you know what it tastes like, but you see Coca-Cola written in places and you start thinking, I want Coca-Cola. And that's how you should also think about social challenges, because that's the same thing. So if you see there are apps right now which are on the App Store which say any transaction you do with your mobile phone, they will round it off. So if you made a transaction for $199, they will make it $200 and they'll give that $1 to a charity. So the idea is they are making you charitable as a habit. And the moment you start giving $30 every month on its own, you become charitable as a person. You start giving people more tips. You start feeling happier. And that's how I think we should try to challenge through scale.
There are two questions for Aaron. First of all, which business model do you suggest for a group of designers that want to work with social change?
Limit your expectation as to how much money you can make. No, I'm kidding. Gosh, that's I mean, you guys are like asking a writer about business models. This is dangerous stuff. If I were with my IDEO.org team, I would be surrounded by business designers and medical professionals and people like that who could take your question. I would say that, God, in terms of business model, that's just not my area of expertise. But I would encourage this group of designers to just get out there and do it. I think part of what is so exciting about human-centered design is that it's about people essentially taking responsibility for the problems that are out there and taking responsibility for solving them. One of the things when we make our teaching tools that we want to do is to create as many problem solvers as possible. You know, if you use our tools, it doesn't mean you're suddenly going to become an expert graphic designer or industrial designer. That's not true. Nothing can, transform you into a designer overnight. But what you can become is a more effective and innovative problem solver. And what we want to do is to inspire people and give them the confidence to go out there and to use our methodology to solve the problems that they see out there. I mean, we would love for the whole world to put us out of business. We would love for there to be no more challenges associated with poverty because people around the world are solving them themselves. I realize that was sort of a sidestep of the business model question.
The other question is about how can we measure the social impact of actions that use the design, human-centered design?
We're working on ourselves because there's such a long timeline associated with so many of these challenges that we tackle when it comes to trying to alleviate poverty, when it comes to trying to benefit poor and vulnerable communities. So it's not a thing that we see impact in overnight. It's rare that we see impact overnight, at least impact of the kind where suddenly other funders and other partners are racing to the table to throw money at us to do it again in another place and again in another place after that. So I would say that when we think about impact, we think about a lot of things. We think about how many people's lives are we changing? How serious is that change? It's incredibly difficult to just suddenly lift an entire community out of poverty. But can we do something, can we design something that makes their lives easier or makes their lives more enjoyable, makes their lives better? So for the 3,500 people in Ghana who now have in-home toilets, who never had them before, think about what it would be like not to have access to that. We think about conveying dignity. We think about, old people, children whose lives are more difficult. We think about women who, wait to go to the bathroom until they get to work. We think about people who now no longer have to use bathrooms because they're in a rough neighborhood, or it's dangerous to go there, or they don't feel safe. So that's one kind of impact. Another is to think about, have you made your partner more innovative? Have you given your partner the tools it needs to actually solve problems in a more exciting way? And then we think about, have we pushed ourselves as designers? Have we improved our craft? Have we made ourselves better for the next engagement? That's another sort of impact that we imagine. So impact is a really hard question, but it's one that we're wrestling with. We're using a consultant right now to help us understand the best way to track our own impact, knowing that it often takes a long time to understand what the work you've done has achieved.
I want to ask Aaron last question that I've been thinking since the beginning. I'd like to know what is the relationship from IDEO.org with the D School. And I was so impressed. The first time I went with a group of people, of executives, and I spoke with some students from Stanford. They were guiding us there. And they opened the school every Friday. So they do, design thinking together with, I'm not sure what they do with IDEO, but I understand that it's a big role that, bringing this methodology within the university. And I was enchanted, actually, because all the students are volunteers. They guide us. They promote that tour, and they not even for companies, but with the social corporations, they were really nice, and I understood. I went to IDEO, and I know why people want to go inside your suitcase with you and work for IDEO. What is the interaction between IDEO.org and D School?
So the D School is, it's sort of like it's the Hasso-Plattner School of Design at Stanford University. And it's a very unusual school there because they actually don't give out any degrees. People who are taking classes at Stanford, typically in the master's programs or the graduate programs, can take courses at the D School where they learn human-centered design and design thinking. And it was a way to try to infuse other elements of your Stanford education, should you be lucky enough to get a Stanford education, with creative problem solving. And the relationship is because IDEO's founder, one of IDEO's founders, David Kelly, was also he was a teacher in the engineering school at Stanford, and he was one of the founders of the D School. So the relationship is actually pretty tight. And I go down to the D School periodically to, help a class or give a workshop or something like that. So IDEO's Palo Alto office is very close to Stanford University, and then we come down from San Francisco all the time. So we look to the D School as very much, comrades in arms, practicing design thinking and training more creative problem solvers. So they've come up with really exciting toolkits. They do great work. In fact, if you visit designkit.org, the website I mentioned earlier, someone from the D School is in one of the videos talking about how empathy is so important to designing something. And then David Kelly, our IDEO's founder, is also in one of the videos talking about creative confidence. So I would say it's a very cozy relationship that we have with the D School, and we think of them as an awesome resource and a fantastic place to learn about design.